Hi folks, I'm Sarah. Welcome to my channel where I'm posting an art video every day for the month of October. Today is day 10 of the Inktober 2018 drawing challenge and the word prompt for today is flowing. So with my animal themed Inktober, this word prompt made me think of a flowing river, and so I decided to paint an otter since they are really cute river dwelling animals. As I've been doing lately, I swatched out the coloured inks I planned on using from my Dr. P.H. Martin's coloured Bombay inks, but will list all the items I used in the description box. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment and subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell icon if you don't want to miss out on the rest of my daily Inktober drawings. And I just want to take a moment to say I really do appreciate all your lovely comments. Thank you so much for all your support, it really helps keep me motivated. Anyway, let's get on with today's painting. My aims for today were to paint a background that was an improvement on yesterday, which is not so difficult, and maybe experiment with lifting ink to create something a bit different. I also wanted to experiment a bit with painting reflections in water, so grabbed a rather unusual tool for this, and you'll catch a glimpse of that later on. So I started with the otter, not the background today, and marked out the fine details with my dip pen in neat black ink before adding a bit of water to map out the other darker values in the picture. So that will be under his mouth, like I'm doing here, under his chest, and also a little bit on the back of his body. I did want to try and convey the direction of the otter's fur, and I didn't want to spend hours on doing individual fur details, so I applied a few light brush strokes onto dry paper for this. This would also hint at the shape and form of the otter's body, and after I'd done this I could then add some colour, and the colours I used for this piece were quite limited again. For the otter himself I used black and sepia in various concentrations and also mixed them together for the darkest brown areas. I also tried to keep some areas free of colour since there was also white fur, looking at my reference picture as well. And then it was just a case of building up the layers until I'd got the saturation and values that I was after. For the background I tried not to overthink it, so started off with some green grass on the right hand side, as you can see I'm doing now. And that was just using the wet on dry technique. Then for the river I marked out some of the darkest areas first using a mixture of green and black ink, waiting for them to dry a bit and adding a more diluted wash. And before this wash had dried I used a flat paintbrush as well as a makeup blending sponge to pull down vertically to try and blend or blur so that the reflections looked quite realistic. And I've seen this technique used for certainly oil painting, but not so much maybe for ink or watercolour. But it did seem to help and kind of blur those lines out a little bit to make it look a bit more like a reflection. Then I moved on to the rock that the otter's hiding behind here and tried to do a fairly sort of loose mixture of techniques, so a little bit of wet on wet as well as a bit of splattering with a more bristly paintbrush just to get some really fine splatters. I was also careful to cover up the otter at this point because in the past, in a couple of videos, I've not done this and got some splatters on areas that I didn't want to. So then it was time to add some more colour and value to the otter himself, still making sure that I left some of the white areas free of ink. Then as I went through the drawing and I increased the values on the body of the otter to get darker, I thought it was then necessary to darken up some of the areas on the river itself. So gradually building up to darker values from lighter values seemed to work and give me the control I was after, in order so that the piece looked fairly balanced. So then it was time to move on to that background, which I was a bit unsure about, as I was going to try lifting some of the ink off the background using the wet in wet technique and just a clean wet paintbrush. So I put some water down, dropped some different colours in, and then added some blades of grass just using my paintbrush, and then went in after that and tried to pull some of those areas away whilst the ink was still wet. And I was actually really pleasantly surprised with how this did work out, and I quite liked the result. One thing I did regret at this point was that I didn't continue the level of the water right up to the top of the page, because as it dried there was a really faint line, like a water line, above where the grass was in the background. But for the most part I was quite happy with how it turned out. And then I lastly went in with just my white gel pen just to put out some highlights, and a black fineliner just to add in some whiskers. So with that, the painting was done. I hope you've enjoyed this one today. I really enjoyed painting it. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, a comment and subscribe, and I'll see you all again tomorrow.